to the channel. Today we're going to do a true crime video. Now I had two picked out, and for the life of me I couldn't decide which one I wanted to pick, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then to top it off, my freaking editing program decided to be special and not work. So we're just going to go with this. And because I got really frustrated and I just didn't feel like going through a whole bunch of crap. So, the case today is Antoinette Renee Frank. Now, she was a former police officer and for New Orleans, and she is now on death row. I'm not sure if she's still on death row. I did not look to see. As a matter of fact, let me see. Is she still there? Um, as far as I know, she is still in. Yes, she is incarcerated in Louisiana. So now, again, she was a police officer, and she and a now, mind you, she was 49 years old. The person that she um the person that she helped was well, I guess saying as an accomplice in this crime with her. He is 18 years old, and his name is Rogers Lacaze. Now, I couldn't really find anything about him out. There was just a bunch of articles and stuff. But what I did find is that he was 18 years old and he was a known drug dealer. So, okay, now I'm going to get into her and then I'll kind of get into him and kind of, I didn't, like I said, there really wasn't a whole lot of information on him either. Um, she, she was born in Opelousas, Louisiana. She became a police officer in 1993 and then till 1995. And she she was born, doesn't say. Now, she did apply to the, I'm sorry, I'm all discombobulated here. She did apply to the New Orleans Police Department, but now this is what I found, kind of gives you an idea of how all of this started with her. Um, she applied in 1993, but there was a former federal agent, and he's also an author of the book called Killer with a Badge, um, said that she was caught lying on several uh, sections of her employment application, and that she failed two standard psychiatric evaluations. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, sorry, that, I do believe that is kind of the, you know, policy for when you do apply as a police officer. You do have to do a psychological event, a psychiatry, yeah, one of those evaluations. Now, I don't know because I've never applied for, to the police station, so I don't, police department, so I don't know. Um, now the psychiatrist examined her and basically said that in no uncertain terms should she become a police officer. And but she did get a second chance to apply, and only because they were shorthanded. Okay, and its officers were being paid less, and I guess basically, they needed the officers, and they decimate that the ranks were being decimated by arrests and drug activity. And there were a lot of potential applicants that were shut out due to a requirement that all officers be residents of New Orleans, which that did eventually change in 2014. Um, Now, because she was an African American female, they felt that um, her being on the force would ease a lot of long-standing racial tension between the police and the population in New Orleans, because most of that population um, is, a majority. I do believe now. I don't know if it's changed in since 1995, but it was, the majority of the population was black. So, they thought, okay, this might, ease tensions. Now, she was hired on February 7th, 1993. She graduated the academy on February the 28th, 1993. So, she graduated, but her tenure was mostly undistinguished. And the only thing that she eventually became distinguished as was Officer of the Month. And this was um, an award that was given out by the local Kiwanis Club. So, basically, she really wasn't that popular, I guess. So now, her relationship, uh, like I said, there really isn't much on him because number one, um, he was 18. Um, he was 18 years old, and when they, you know, uh, when they decided to commit this robbery, like I said, there really, really, wasn't a whole lot of information. I searched him. I did everything you could think of to find him, and the only really, thing that they had about him was that he was a known drug dealer, and he had been shot. And she handled, now this is how they became, you know I guess whatever they became. Frank handled this incident on November the 25th, in which Lucchese, which, like I said, was a known drug dealer, and he had been shot. And they believe that now Department of Public and Safety and Corrections believed that this was the first contact that the two had. Although, okay, although she states in her statement that they met 8 months before. So, why did she lie? See what I'm getting at? So now, she had taken his statement after he got shot, and she started getting closer to him because she thought that maybe he could, you know, maybe, she could help him by turning his life around. Now remember, she's 49 years old, or however old she was at the time, and he's 18. And okay, but um, she got closer to him in hopes that she could turn his life around. And excuse me, but she was smitten with his bad boy, whatever persona. So now, and of course, then it eventually turned sexual. So now, um, she kept they kept having a relationship, even though she knew that it would, you know, even though she knew that it was, jeopardizing her career. Because, I mean, now, see, that's what I don't understand. If you know that it's going to mess up your career, why bother to jeopardize your career with, having some kind of a relationship with a well known drug dealer? I mean, I don't get it. Maybe I'm just one of these ones that's old and fuddy duddy and just, okay, I just don't see the appeal. So now this became noticeable. The relationship became noticeable enough that other police officers witnessed Lucchese driving her personal vehicle, and even witnessed him moving her police unit at the scene of an accident that she was investigating. So, okay. Now my next question is, why is he at the scene of an investigate? Why is he at the scene of an accident and where she is, and he's not supposed to be there? Secondly, why is he moving her car? To me, that makes no sense at all whatsoever. Because number one, why are you doing something that you could get in trouble for? I mean, like I said, is it because she just doesn't excuse my language, give a fuck? Or is it, I don't know. Maybe you guys could tell me. Okay. So now, he even accompanied her on a complainant call. And now, mind you, okay, on this call, she introduces Lucchese as a witness, or excuse me, as a trainee. And on other occasions, she introduced him as her nephew. So obviously, she's older than him. Okay. And prior to the murders, there were others that testified that they had seen her and that they would see her, that they witnessed her pulling over um, mobsters and would rob them while they were in their car. Or rob the mobsters, or motorists, excuse me, not mobsters, motorists in the squad car. So, in other words, they would pull these motorists over and then they would turn around and rob them. All right. Now, she refused to discuss her relationship with uh, with the DOC investigation, except to say that she was trying to help him. But of course, it was later revealed that they were having a sexual relationship. And when she was asked why she would continue the relationship, she, knowing that he was involved, dealing drugs and so forth, she responded, or yeah, and in the shooting, she responded that she would not disassociate herself from him just because of his past. So basically, she already knows that he's, trouble anyway, but she, just doesn't really, it doesn't seem to matter to her. Um, Now, they also asked her, now mind you, this is during the DOC investigation. They also asked her about the fact that, um, she tried to buy 9mm ammunition at Walmart for Lucchese. And her, excuse me, this was on the day of the murders of the restaurant, which I will get to in just a minute. Um, and she stated that she was a police officer and that there was, excuse me, ooh, that there was nothing wrong with her buying ammunition. And she claimed also in her statement that she and Lucchese are not dating, that they weren't dating, and had never been intimate, but she refused to discuss anything with the investigators about the murders. Um, and of course, then every time she asked, now remind you, now, okay, we're going to get, let me get to, now I'm going to kind of going to give you this little thing, but now when they kept asking her a question, she eventually told them to look it up in the record or asserted her innocence. So, you know, obviously, I this woman I don't understand. Okay, now, um, now there are two men that claim that they met Lucchese at a party um, on February the 4th, 1995, and they were leaving the party. A verbal altercation ensued, but one of them suggested that they leave. The two men then got into their vehicle and drove for several blocks before, okay, until a police car pulled them over. Frank, in her police uniform, exited the squad and told both Wallace and Stevens to get out and go to the back of the car. Okay, now this is where this gets really, really strange and really, really crazy. Now, at that point, Wallace did see Rogers Lucchese, and he noticed that he was holding a gun. And according to Stevens, Wallace then rushed Lucchese, and the two men began to fight back. And Stevens and Frank also jumped in the fray, and the weapon discharged. Stevens began running, but another man appeared and grabbed both Lucchese and Frank, or excuse me, Lucchese and Wallace. But Frank yelled out that Lucchese was the good guy and that Wallace was the one causing the problems. And Wallace was then restrained until a backup unit arrived on the scene, and he was arrested and charged with attempted murder and armed robbery. So while Frank and Lucchese, you know, are pretty good at what they do, and she's, you know, Frank is like, you know, one of these ones that can, you know, basically, it sounds to me like she basically, you know, basically sounds to me like she tells her version of the story, because number one, there isn't anybody there to witness this, even though Wallace is telling something completely different. And then, okay, now then, even though here comes another police officer and he stops them, and yeah, but of course he's, you know, now here's where it gets really, really interesting. Okay, this is the civil sheriff, the one that I guess she tried to tell him that he was the good guy. Irvin Bryant was the civil sheriff, testified that he observed a stopped police vehicle with its lights flashing. Bryant thought that the officer was making a traffic stop, but as he got closer, he saw that the officer and two black men were fighting on the side of the road. And at that time, Wallace had picked up the gun off the grass. Bryant ordered Wallace to drop the gun, which he did immediately and was restrained. Lucchese then lunged at Wallace, but Bryant grabbed him. And that's when Frank, said, he's the good guy, and ordered him released. Now, despite his involvement, they never questioned Irvin Bryant about this at the time. And he never gave a formal statement. Why? Don't know. Have no clue. It does not come out why he never gave the formal statement. Now, how he ended up giving a formal statement later is a really, really good question. And how he ended up testifying, that's a good question. So now we're going to get into the murders. Now, again, these are Vietnamese names. I'm going to probably butcher them, so bear with me. Now, the crime took place at the Kim Anai restaurant, which is in New Orleans, but it was damaged in this is before it was damaged by 2000 and by Hurricane Katrina. So again, this is in 1995, and now Frank and another police officer by the name of Roland Williams II worked as off-duty. They worked off-duty as security for this restaurant. Now, why, this restaurant needed security, is a good question. I'm not really sure. And so anyway, after midnight on March the 4th of 1995, Lucchese and Frank visited the restaurant, and which was run by the Vu family. Okay, please don't judge because I do not know how to pronounce these names. Now, as I said, she was, she sometimes worked there as, now they cleaned the closed restaurant, and Chow Vu went to the kitchen and to count the money and entered the dining room and to pay Ronald Williams and for, I guess for his night as security. He was a father and a husband. He was a father of 2 children, and of course, he was married. And when of course, when Chow went to pay, now Chow noticed that Antoinette Frank was approaching the restaurant. So now he probably wouldn't have thought anything of it. Okay, now mind you, Chow knew that they had already been in the restaurant twice before and to get leftover food to eat. Now, they wouldn't have thought anything about that. Of course, okay, I don't know if, that was a normal thing for her to come in, when she was on duty or whatever, as a police officer to get food. I don't really know. So now, I guess it raised enough warning flags with Chow to, really, really, bother her, because on the very last visit, when Chow let her and Lucchese out, she couldn't find her key to the door. And come to find out, um, when Frank returned again for the third time, she sensed that something was wrong, or something was going to go wrong. So now they go and hide the money. She goes and hides the money um, in the microwave. And Frank entered the front door using the key that she had stolen, and walked quickly past Williams, pushing Chow and Chow's brother Clock and a restaurant employee into the doorway of the kitchen. Now, mind you, I'm butchering these names, so please, bear with me. So now Williams had started to go to find out what was wrong. By the time, yeah, and of course, as he started to do that, shots were rang out. Shots, were fired and so forth. Now, mind you, Rogers Lucchese, as you know, was with her and had been with her all the times that they had gone into the restaurant that night. Now, mind you, he was not seen when she came the third time. But come to find out, he was kind of, I guess, hiding or staying back. I'm not really sure how to describe that. But as Williams goes to see what is going on, Lucchese slips behind him and shoots him in the neck, and it severed his spinal cord. And then, even though he can't move as it is, and he's fallen to the ground, he continues to get shot in the head and the back. And Frank then turns to the dining room, and with her being distracted, Chow grabs Kwok, and they go and hide in the large walk-in cooler, which is in the kitchen. And they turned out the light as they entered. Now, there were two other people in the restaurant, which is their sister and their brother. They didn't know where they were. And they were, at the time, they were sweeping the dining room floors. So, you've got two people that you don't know where they are. So now, Frank is now, looking in the kitchen. She's searching the kitchen, and they weren't sure what she was looking for. So now she, they see her move, and then gunshots were fired, and they, continue to search for the money. And Lucchese and Frank had been shouting at Ha and Chong, and they wanted to know where the money was. And they claimed they didn't know where Chow hid the money. So now, by this time, Frank pistol whips her, and I guess it was enough to make Chong reveal where the money was. And Frank got the money out, then shot 21-year-old Ha 3 times as she knelt pleading for her life. Then she turns around and shoots Chong 6 times. And after they left the premises, okay, now this is where it gets really, really. I'm sorry, I wouldn't be this um, stupid in the first place. Now, mind you, after Lucchese had shot Williams, I'm assuming that he stole his wallet and whatever credit cards, and there's a reason I say that. Um, so now Chow tries to call 911 on her cell phone, and but because the cooler prevented a stable signal, she leaves and goes out the back door to um, a nearby friend's home and calls 911. Now this is where it gets really, really you know in my opinion, stupid on Frank's part. Now, once they fled the restaurant, Frank drops Lucchese off at a nearby apartment complex, knowing that witnesses were left behind. And now, mind you, she has her police radio. Now, this is what I find kind of like, okay, where did she find this? She hears the 911 call on her portable radio saying that an officer was down. So she borrows a police car and she returns to the scene. Now, number one, where did she get the patrol car from? She dropped off Lucchese in her personal vehicle. So where did she get the police car from? What did it do? Just magically appear? Okay. She posed as the responding officer. Okay. First of all, that's her first mistake. She poses as the responding officer, and she intends to kill Chow and Kwok, and to basically ensure that they can't they're because they're witnesses. She's trying to get rid of any kind of evidence, witnesses that it was her and Lucchese. So now, okay, she parks in the rear, and Frank enters the restaurant through the back door, and she makes her way through the kitchen, and she gets to the dining room, and she sees Chow at the front door, and Chow sees her and runs out the front door of the restaurant. By this time, there are other officers that have arrived at the scene. Okay, now mind you, Frank is still in the restaurant. She's still posing as the responding officer. So Frank indeed immediately identifies herself as a police officer, and Chow told Frank that she knew what she had done and cried to the others that Frank had committed the crime. So basically, I'm sorry, but I have to say that was kind of, a bad move on her part. Because number one, why would you go back knowing that the 911 call came over the radio? Other officers are going to show up. Why would... Makes no sense. Okay, now, there is a homicide detective named Eddie Rance that worked the case. And he believed that they had planned this robbery because Frank believed that Williams was shortchanging her on hours and on pay from the restaurant, and that she wanted revenge. And she was described as the most cold-hearted person that he'd ever encountered in the 3 decades that he's been a police officer. Okay. Now, Chow and Frank were questioned, and they were seated at different tables. And so, and basically, she was arrested. Frank was arrested for 3 counts of first-degree murder. Lucchese was arrested and charged later that night. Now, I'm going to tell you how he got caught. When they left, after she dropped him off at the apartment complex, he used Williams's credit card, Chevron credit card, at a Chevron gas station. That's how he got caught. So now, she confessed. She later confessed, and she'd been charged with, and so did Lucchese, and so they've been charged. Now, their trials were severed. Lucchese's trial was on ran from July 17th to the 21st of in 1995. He was found guilty, and he was charged, and he was sentenced to death. So, okay, now like I said, his main tip off and how he got caught was because he used Williams's Chevron gas station card. Now, Frank's trial began in September the 6th, 1995, and Frank's attorneys subpoenaed 39 witnesses. Now, what these 39 witnesses were for is a very good question, because I'm not really sure. Okay, now I just happened to look and I realized something I did forget. Now, mind you, and Frank was staying with her father, and this just I happened to scroll and I saw this. Now, her father disappeared, and this was, shortly before she committed these murders. Now, they did find um, a skull in her backyard with um, a bullet in it. And they do believe that it was her father, and this is what also made her, also helped to make her a suspect in the murders of, in the restaurant murders. So, really. So now, her trial was on September the 12th. They only needed 22 minutes. Now, again, I don't know why they needed the 39 why they subpoenaed 39 witnesses, because it doesn't really say what the witnesses were for. They didn't call any of them. The jury only needed 22 minutes to return a guilty verdict, and on all counts, and at the time, for record capital murder case, and the next day they only needed 45 minutes to recommend the death penalty. So you know, she was formally sentenced and to death on October the 20th, 1995, and she was sent to death row in near Baton Rouge. And now the aftermath, and there are more developments on this. Officer Williams was laid to rest in Lawn Mater Cemetery. The View family kept the restaurant open for and until they suffered flood damage from Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And then post-storm looters stealing jewelry, and which they had been wearing when they were killed. And then Kwok and his mother sold the location, reopening a restaurant in Harahan, Louisiana. And then a year and a half before, now this is where I was telling you, a year and a half before the murders, um, Frank's father had stayed at her home for a time because before she then reported him missing. Now, a month after she received her first death sentence, a dog found a human skull that was buried under Frank's house. And Chuck Hustmeyer says, and I'll quote, "As for those were human bones unearthed beneath Frank's house, so far authorities have made no serious effort to identify them. The 10-year-old case, they say, remains under investigation." So they think that it's possibly her father. Now, they think that Antoinette murdered her. However, she's facing the death penalty, and they've made no effort to try her for her father's death. So, regardless, she's already going to be put to death anyway. So, they're not even going to try to. Now, on October the 18th, 2006, Frank's lawyers argued before the Louisiana State Supreme Court, stating that her death penalty or death sentence should be overturned because she was denied state-funded experts to help prepare for the sentencing phase. I just realized something. Maybe it's me. I don't know. Maybe it's me. But these defense attorneys try to find a loophole or anywhere and everywhere they can to get convictions overturned. I mean, granted, yes, some of them may actually work, but really? Okay, so now, they had argued that the defense needed to conduct a investigation into the defendant's background for possible mitigating evidence. Her attorneys introduced the testimony of psychiatrists who said that possible traumatic events from Frank's childhood could have affected her behavior. Okay, and she may have been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And now there was a psychiatrist that was retained by the state that disagreed with that. And now I lost my place. He agreed. No, excuse me. He disagreed that she showed signs of trauma, but he agreed with the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial tendencies that were given to Frank by doctors at the Correctional Institute. And so now the state Louisiana Supreme Court did rule that the death penalty should be upheld. And now in 2008, the judge then signed the death warrant. According to the warrant, Frank was scheduled for execution by lethal injection on June 15th, 2008. And May, she was, however, issued a 90-day stay of execution. And the reason for this stay of execution was there was pending ongoing appeals. So now, you know, okay, now, September the 11th, 2008, the state Supreme Court then issued a new death warrant that was signed by the same judge. According to the second warrant, Frank was scheduled for execution by lethal injection on December the 8th, 2008. And a new round of appeals. Now, mind you, they're doing all of they can to not, argued that they had too little time to review and the voluminous record before the deadline. The state Supreme Court ruled on that case again. Their decision was made public. They effectively voided the warrant. And now, 2009, Frank's lawyers moved to have Judge Murillo remove herself from the post-conviction appeals on grounds of bias, given that he had already already signed 2 of the death warrants, and for Frank, and they ruled on January 23rd, 2010. They ruled that Murillo should not be taken off the case. Frank's attorney stated that they would appeal the ruling to the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, which had already See, this is what I don't understand. They're going to keep appealing this, but yet it's already been overruled. So, however, in 2010, in October, a lower court state judge ruled that Murillo had to be recused from the case, from Frank and Lucchese's cases, because it was unclear if he had been open with the defense teams about his own surprising connection to the gun used in the restaurant murders. Now, this is what gets interesting, okay? Which I did not know this either. I was kind of shocked when I heard this part. Murillo's signature appeared on an order authorizing Frank to take the murder weapon from the evidence room. Murillo has long maintained that the signature was forged. So, okay. So that, he got recused. So now, in July of 2015, a retired district court judge threw out Rogers Lucchese's conviction and sentence and ordered a new trial. Michael Kirby, the retired judge, said that Lucchese deserved a new trial because one of the jurors hid the fact that now this is just crazy, that he was a Louisiana state trooper and had previously worked as a railroad policeman. At the time, commissioned law enforcement officers were legally barred from sitting on a jury. He also wrote that while he felt the evidence of Lucchese's guilt was overwhelming, the juror misconduct amounted to structural defect and violation of a constitutional right so basic to a fair trial that only remedy was a new trial. So Kirby's ruling had no effect on Frank's conviction. So basically, okay. So now it doesn't tell you what happened to him. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, he was resentenced and to life in prison without parole. and he is serving his sentence at Louisiana State Penitentiary. Now, I didn't know this, and this is very interesting because I did not know this. They're on. There's also. She was. Frank was featured on a couple of episodes and shows. One is called. She was featured, profiled in an episode of Deadly Women in 2009, Snapped Killer Couples in 2015, and I'd Kill for You in 2016. In November of 2020, TV One debuted a movie inspired by Antoinette Frank called Blood on Her Badge. So she must have been pretty popular, and and I find it interesting because there are some of these cases that I look up that I've never heard of, and oh yes, by the way, they've been made to movies. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. I did not know that. So I hope you know, didn't get too confused by this. So that's all I have for today, guys. And I hope everyone has a great week. Thank you for listening. And I will see you next time.